Hey, folks. Ready to get started? Talk about MCP Server, DBT MCP Server. All right, so thanks for joining us today. We'll be talking about how to build high-quality AI workflows with the DBT MCP Server. Actually, do we have a clicker?
That's important.
Yeah, it is.
You need the clicker. We don't have an agent to move you through the slides yet, but maybe we can build one.
Perfect. All right, briefly talking about the agenda, what are we going to cover today? We'll talk about how we got here, right, from the modern data stack to this AI era that we are also immersed in right now. We'll dig a little bit into what is MCP, right, as a standard that it has emerged recently. And then we'll talk about what is the DBT MCP server, what it is, what it can bring to existing DBT users, and how you can use it to power things like AI agents and other AI workflows. And then we'll dig a bit into how it actually works. We'll dissect and talk about the 4 different buckets of tools that are available at your disposal to use to build out this really cool functionality. And then we'll even hint a little bit about what DBT agents. This was a really fun, exciting announcement that came out yesterday of the keynote, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is and what that means for the future of AI with DBT. And then we'll end things with just some next steps. So if you walk away from this session, you're like, cool, this is great. How do I learn more? How do I get hands-on? We'll give you all some resources, both here on site at Coalesce, and then once you get home to kind of learn a bit more. So cool. Who are we? Who's talking to you today on stage? My name's Sara. I'm a technical product marketing manager here at DBT Labs, and alongside me.
Hey, Jason Ganz, Senior Manager of Developer Experience and AI Strategy.
Awesome. So cool. So kicking things off with just some framing, right? From about 2016 to 2023, we really saw the modern data stack emerge as something that can really help organizations transform raw data into usable and trustworthy insights. It gave us reliable pipelines, governed metrics, scalable transformation workflows, basically everything that data teams needed to build that confidence in what they were measuring, reporting, and making decisions on. But times change, right? There's one consistent thing, it's that. And data practitioners and all of us, honestly, are now faced with AI adoption, very widespread AI adoption. And we're left to tackle a set of challenges that might feel familiar to you, right? And they should, right? These challenges have resurfaced in new forms, and they're being shaped by this new technology. So with the modern data stack, what do I mean by this? We were trying to solve some of these questions and answer them. So can I trust the data behind this dashboard? Are we all using the same definition for revenue? And then how do I scale my models and keep everything in sync as teams grow? So those are some of the initial set of questions. And now in the AI era, these questions haven't really disappeared. They've simply evolved. And now we're asking questions like, can I trust the answer that an AI system is giving me? How do I know that it's actually using the right logic or the right metric? And then how do I manage dozens or maybe even hundreds of models, agents, prompts across these workflows without losing control? So AI is running into a lot of the same problems that the modern data stack kind of came to solve. Things like reliability, governance, scalability, what else? Access, and then safe automation. And that's where the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, kind of comes into play. MCP acts as this standardized bridge between these 2 different eras, connecting AI systems to the trusted data models, definitions, and workflows that we've all spent a lot of time and resources building over the past number of years. It brings the discipline and governance of the modern data stack into this new world of intelligent systems so we can move faster without sacrificing trust. And all right, we all heard from yesterday from Tristan about the importance on standards, why standards matter. MCP is an open source standard that came from Anthropic that really lets AI applications talk to external systems in a consistent, governed way. It follows a client-server architecture pattern. You can think of it like a universal adapter that any host, something like Claude Desktop or Cursor, can use to connect to one or more MCP servers. So why does this matter? I think there's a few things here. I think the first one is interoperability. So being able to swap hosts or servers without having to spend a lot of time rewiring anything. Another one is permissioning. So having a one policy model that can actually govern access to these things everywhere to anyone that wants to use them. And then finally, auditability. So being able to have every request and response typed and logged for transparency's sake. And that's what makes it safe enough for enterprise data and AI to finally meet. So each server, just to kind of break it down a little bit further, each server in the MCP ecosystem can expose 3 main capabilities: tools, resources, and prompts. So with tools, these are executable functions that AI applications can invoke to perform specific actions. So this could be something like making an API call or running some database query. And then we have resources. So these are data sources that are actually bringing that context to your AI system. Something like file contents, records, or the actual result of that query. And then prompts. So these are reusable templates that help structure how AI interacts with language models. And together, these form a very stable interface for these AI systems to work with trusted tooling and data without breaking governance. You don't need a custom adapter for each AI app anymore. They all simply speak MCP. And so earlier this year, we released our DBT MCP server. It was super exciting, super great. This server actually connects everything that you've already built and trust in your DBT project to any of these AI-enabled clients. So you can think of it as this glue layer. AI asks a question, DBT MCP server maps that to the right bit of context. And what could that be? That could be anything from your model, your metrics, your lineage, your documentation, even some of your job details, right? It takes all of that context, compiles it into what's needed, and then returns some structured and reliable results. It really brings more than just vibes to your analytics. Right, thanks. Okay, so I got one laugh out of that. And then as far as how do I use it, there's kind of 2 different flavors for deployment of the MCP server. The first is local, and this is a great option. It's pretty self-explanatory, right? It runs locally on your computer, and it runs alongside your DBT project. And this is a great way to do local development, right? So if you're trying to use something like Cursor or Claude, this is probably my recommendation because it ensures that the code you're writing locally actually matches what the agent has access to. So that's local, and then we also have this remote MCP server that we've been talking a bit about. And here, this server is hosted in the DBT platform, right? So not a lot of infrastructure to maintain or manage, right? It's just kind of out of the box in the platform, and it allows clients to connect over the network. So remote servers actually open doors for a lot of interesting different AI experiences because it enables things like long-running, multi-tenant, or multi-user agents, right? And it can even connect to web applications, which is pretty neat. So again, kind of if you think about what that opens up in terms of use cases or things that you can build, remote server is honestly very powerful for that. And when we think about, hey, why should we use the DBT MCP server, we can frame it, actually, shout out to Jason for this example that he shared with me at a table, literally just 2 days ago. And I think we've talked a little bit about how there are some challenges when it comes to the current user experience when using something like an LLM for data use cases, right? And we can kind of break it down into these 3 layers. So the first, if we're talking, interacting with an LLM and we ask it, what is the capital of Nevada? It'll say it's Carson City, right? And that is because it has inherently been trained on this data, and it knows that, again, Carson City is the capital of Nevada. If we go another level deeper and we ask what was the temperature in Carson City today, it'll say, hey, there was a high of 54 degrees Fahrenheit, low of 37. And it knows this because maybe that LLM is actually able to do a web search and find a response that is trustworthy that way. But when we go to ask another question, a more specific question, maybe to our business or to our organization, something like, what are our best-selling products in Carson City, it won't know how to respond, right? Or maybe it'll respond with some weird hallucination. But this is because it does not have the context to your business and your data. So that is something that the, again, DBT MCP server can help bring to AI. And what happens when you give AI agents this structured, governed context? I think there's a few things here. First and foremost, reliability. This is a big one. Without structured context, AI agents are essentially guessing about your data model. They might hallucinate table names, they might invent joins that don't actually exist, or simply misunderstand metrics and their definitions. But when you plug them into DBT through MCP, They have direct access to, again, all of that context within your project, your models, joins, your metric definitions, lineage, job details, the exact same source of truth that your team uses in their day-to-day. So that, again, this means instead of like guessing about what the customer's table actually looks like, or again, how to define a specific metric, it simply knows because it knows your DBT project. So next is velocity. So think about how much time you all spend in your day-to-day simply explaining context or trying to dig up what the context is for a specific question. So where does this data live? Why did this job fail? What is the definition of an active user here? With the DBT MCP server, AI can navigate your project independently. So it understands those dependencies, knows what models exist, how they relate to each other, and how they are defined. So that means engineers spend less time living in documentation and more time actually building, which is awesome. And with all of this context to your DBT assets, AI becomes more of like a self-sufficient collaborator, not something that you actually have to like sit and babysit and validate the output of. And then third, consistency. So when 5 people ask their AI tools about a revenue metric, you want them all to get the same answer. And if you're hearing that and going like, well, this sounds like maybe something that I've heard a lot about this week in terms of like the semantic layer, you would be correct, right? Because this is all about enriching the context that you're providing some AI system. So again, being able to actually feed it all of those metrics and the ways you define those and calculate those into the DBT MCP server. And then finally, safety. So this one's critical, especially as we move more towards autonomous agents. You don't want an AI assistant with like unfettered access to your warehouse, running arbitrary queries, or modifying production models. The DBT MCP server really gives you these governed guardrails. Agents, can work within these defined permissions, right? Whether there's like, especially like thinking about like read-only permissions on certain actions. They can only, access specific data models, right, that you feed them. And again, this is just super important as we are thinking about agents and having them do some of the heavy lifting for us sometimes, right? We want to be able to define it in a way that it feels more like giving something API access versus giving something like our database credentials for prod, right? I think one thing feels a little bit safer, and that's where, thinking about your use case, your intentions, how you want to set this up, and what you want it to be able to do is really important. And once you do that, I think, it really unlocks a lot of powerful things. So let's talk a little bit about how it actually works.
Whew. Awesome. Thank you, Sara. Alrighty, so we have been talking a lot about AI workflows in MCP this week. And if you take just one thing out of this conversation, it's that the DBT MCP server is how you connect everything that DBT does to everything that AI and LLMs can do. It is the bridge between your structured data and your AI workflows. But we think it's really important to actually have opinions about what people are doing with this and how to do it right. So when we started building the MCP server, we wanted to answer the questions of actually, what are the useful AI workflows that we can build out? And so via a lot of conversations with some teams building out really cool kind of next generation workflows, we've honed in on these 4 categories as the initial set of use cases that we think that, that agents on top of the MCP server are going to be really good at. And these aren't hard lines, like often these things will overlap, but it's really useful to have these categories in your mind as you're thinking about what might I want to do as I'm building AI workflows on top of DBT. And so let's walk through them. The first is discover. DBT knows a lot about the data assets that exist in your data platform. So you can use the Discover tools to go and find models, trace them through your lineage, and really get a solid sense of what actually exists in your data warehouse, in your data platform. The next is consume. So once you find out about what lives in your data warehouse, the next question is, okay, let's start asking it some questions. And the consume tools are how you actually take a question and get back an answer. The develop tools are all about actually building out and enhancing your DBT project. So we've talked a lot about how the developer experience of DBT is changing. One of the things that we talk a lot about here is that great dev tools for humans are also great dev tools for agents. And so we are building out the tooling such that if you're using an AI-assisted coding tool, then we are going to have the right underlying primitives to be able to let you all kind of like focus on describing, here's a transformation I want to make, here's a new model, and then use the develop tools to get those in place. And then finally, there's operate. So once you have your DB2 project, you need to orchestrate it, you need to set up your jobs. There's a lot of work around the actual building and deployment. And so the operate tools allow you to check in on operations running on top of your DB2 jobs. Okay, so those are the use cases, but what I want to do is actually dive into each of those and talk about the tools. So Sara walked us through tools are one of the primary abstractions available in MCP, and a tool is exactly what it sounds like. A tool is something that an LLM can call to get back information or perform an operation. And so if you are using the DBT MCP server or you're using our pre-built agent, what you're doing is you're using an agent on an LLM running these tools. And it's very helpful to know what the actual tools that you have available are for you. So Discover tools, like we said before, are all about discovering the assets in your DBT project. The primary tools that are useful in the, well, okay, so we have all the tools here, but the most used ones that we're seeing right now, pretty easy, get all models. So you ask a question, and if you have a reasonably sized, even moderately large DBT project, you can actually work within the log context windows to get back all of the models, and then the the LLM can reason over those and say, oh, I probably want to be looking in dim customers. But then once you have asked a question and you found the correct model, you need to know actually what's happening in the model. You need to know what columns it has. You need to know the code that's there. And so that's where the get model details are. So if you're building any workflows that are doing data discovery, probably the most common pattern that you're going to have right now is it'll be something that calls get all models to answer a question, and then it'll hone in and get model details. And over time, we anticipate adding a whole lot more metadata in, particularly to get model details. The other one that I want to call out is one of our tools that's based off of DBT Fusion, which is get column lineage. So it's really helpful if you're kind of tracking for a human, when you need to track through a bug in a system, or you're trying to see how a column got created, to see that column lineage. And being able to present that to the models actually allows it to traverse through the graph and to find the source of that data. The next is consume. So we know, and I have felt this myself, data teams get just crushed all the time with these ad hoc data requests. And is self-serve analytics real? Is it not real? Has been probably the perennial question at Coalesce, and going back, I'm sure, to many data conferences before that. So using the consume tools is how we see teams building their own analytics agents. So one of the really common patterns for this is you have a Slack channel and you allow people in your team to post questions, and then the DBT MCP server powers an analyst agent that is able to go and hit the DBT semantic layer. And the way that works in practice is first it's going to find out what metrics it has available to it. So if I asked how many leads were created by region last month, first it's going to go, and it's going to list metrics, and it's going to go and find the lead metric. From there, the LLM will go and say, OK, I have the metric, which is leads, but how can I break this out? What more information can I get out of this? So then it will call get dimensions. And get dimensions will return to it the exact dimensions that it can use to safely query that data. And then from there, it will go and query metrics. And the DBT semantic layer is, we think, the best way to get high trust, high quality results when you are consuming data out of your data platform. But we also know that SQL's not going anywhere. So we do have the execute SQL tools, and what we're seeing emerge as a pattern that I anticipate we're going to see growing over the coming year is kind of having different trust levels. So you can have an agent that first looks and queries your semantic layer if it exists, but then if not, it will attempt to use to write a SQL query. And remember, we have the discover tools. So if it's writing a SQL query, it can go and it can do all of the discovery that it needs to. Next is develop. So I don't know how many, actually, show of hands, how many people in here have tried an agentic coding experience where you go something like a Claude Code, a Cursor, a Codex? Yeah. So for me, when I sat down and I tried Claude Code for the first time, it was about 2 weeks after the Fusion launch, the first time I had a break in the calendar. It was just such a game changer. It felt, honestly, like it's like nothing before, where you just see the models like going and getting built up and being able to spin up a DBT project from scratch. But as you're doing this, it's still important that it knows about what DBT commands to use, and particularly for data work, there's a lot of expertise that you need encoded into the agentic coding workflows to be able to get them to actually work. And so a lot of data teams are building out analytics, engineering, development workflows with agentic coding tools, and then using the DBT MCP server as one of the ways to provide in tools for those agentic coding experiences. And then finally, operate. This is a great one. So we added these tools relatively recently, but this is the classic thing of you wake up, one of your recurring jobs has failed. Why? What's going on? And so job remediation, this is the first step on the way to job remediation. So right now, what we can do is you can use the MCP server to get the details for any jobs, find job failures, and kind of return back the logs. I don't know about you, but I've been spending a lot of time going and copying things out of the DBT jobs information in DBT platform and pasting it into ChatGPT and be like, what happened? And so just like the easiest step with the operate jobs is now you just don't have to do that. You can have an automatic thing, so when there's a job failure, it can tell you what happened, and pretty soon we'll be able to make a swag at getting that fixed up. And so those are the 4 use cases of the DBT MCP server. We anticipate that there are going to be more. I'm excited to hear from all of you of what isn't covered in those 4. And specifically, there's a lot of tools within those 4 that we know we need to add. So I'm excited for people to try those out, see what works, what doesn't, and we can keep building and iterating on top of them. One thing that we want to talk about is you definitely want to be aware when you are deploying agents into production. These systems can take action, and they don't always take the exact right action. So just a bit of a kind of awareness check. For the discover and consume tools, those are idempotent. It's not gonna change any data. So you can deploy those. You obviously want to have kind of data access concerns in place, but you can be pretty laissez-faire using those. The operate tools, over time, those are going to be kicking off jobs and operating things in your data platform. So you'll want to make sure that you have the appropriate guardrails there. And then particularly for development, you want to make sure that you are, I don't know how many of you have seen the tweets of like, whoops, like my coding agent deleted my production database. We're spending a lot of time and energy making sure that there are guardrails in place there. But the most important thing to do is have the permission set up actually on the database level, so your coding agent can only do the jobs that you want it to do. So since we rolled out the MCP server, the reception's been really great. We have over 400 companies that are using it, making 30,000 API calls. And like the thing that is really great for me to see is we have a really thriving community on this. The tools, DBT, MCP server, the MCP, we have it as an open source repository. And this is an area where kind of like we as a community are figuring out an entirely new workflow. It's totally unlike anything that's ever been done before. And every day, honestly, we see people building new things, kind of like probing at the edges here. It's a very interesting and dynamic time, and one where definitely there's a lot of impact to be made and kind of figuring out the industry best practices. Now, if you are not the type of person that is going to be spending all your time hanging out on the DBT Slack in the Tools MCP channel, and you're like, hey, Jason, this sounds great, but I actually don't want to kind of build all of this from scratch. We have built a set of out-of-the-box agents which will do the primary workflows that we've talked through here for you. And so these are these are going into beta soon, and the analyst agent, discovery agent, observability agent, and developer agent map to the 4 use cases that we just talked through. So using these are built on top of the DBT MCP server, and they are kind of our bundled up way of saying, hey, we think that this is a really great way to mix these tools together into AI workflows right now. Over time, we anticipate a lot of people will use our out-of-the-box agents, and that a lot of people will be building their own custom agentic workflows on top of it. So really, no bad picks, just whatever works for you and your team. Now, we got a ton more resources on all of this. So if you are interested in getting started, we have the MCP documentation and open source repository so that you can go and get going. Later this afternoon at 3:45? 3:45, we will be having a product roundtable where we can get together and discuss this. So hope to see you all there. And we're just going to sit down and have a kind of practical hands-on talk about where people are today and what it looks like to actually move towards rolling these out. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., we have the MCP Hackathon. So if you want to try this, the MCP Hackathon is for all levels of familiarity. We think if you have never tried the MCP before, never even heard the letters MCP before, and you're like, okay, this sounds kind of cool, come check it out, and we'll get you through kind of the first step of workflows. Or if you're an old hat at MCP, you've been playing around in there, come add some new tools. We'll have the dev team in there, and looking to see if we can get some interesting new contributions. And then finally, if you swing by the booth, there are MCP lightning talks going on. Please, if you're interested in this, beyond these things, come hang out in tools, DBT, MCP. It's where, honestly, I spend a bunch of my time these days. There's just so much cool, interesting discussion happening there, and would love to connect with all of you. And finally, we have put together an O'Reilly report that is around using structured data in your AI workflows. This is something that we've put together kind of as a resource for all of you to begin to standardize on what the industry best practices are. So you can download the early chapters, and we'll be doing more with that as time goes on. So thank you all so much for coming out. Happy DBTing, happy MCPing, and we will see you around.